Hello there. Today I'm in Den Haag to meet a friend, but because I'm sort of killing time before I meet with them, I thought what I'd do is answer a few questions that people have been asking me about Going Dutch. So with your permission, I will sort of take in some of the sights of Den Haag and answer some questions along the way. Right, on to the first question, and the first question I have is, what is Going Dutch Around the World? Well, simply, it is an everyday cycle ride which will see me cycle the world, looking at cycling cultures and seeing how people relate to the bicycle. How long do you think it will take you to ride around the world? Well, the ride is broken down into 6 stages if you exclude the prologue here in the Netherlands. And my aim isn't to ride the shortest distance, or indeed set the fastest time for doing so. My aim really is to sort of go round the world in a, not a leisurely fashion, but in a timely fashion. And with the breaks at the end of each stage, I think it's probably likely that 5 years is a working time frame, and that's the one that I will sort of focus on. So the next question is, will you miss your friends and family? Or will you miss your family and friends? That probably should be. I think yes and no. The thing with the sort of modern world is you're never that far away from friends and family. You've got ways of keeping in touch, modern technologies, etc. And although I'm in the Netherlands and it's not that far from the UK, of course, I've had numerous phone call conversations, WhatsApp, FaceTime, etc. messages, and of course my ability to talk to friends and family is enhanced through YouTube, Patreon, and indeed the website and Facebook. So there's an element of missing friends and family, of course, but it's not the same as it used to be. Travel is a more inclusive. Yeah, I think travelling in the modern world is much different to it was in years gone by. The other thing I would say about travelling in the modern world is, or perhaps just travelling generally, is that people you meet are interested in what you're up to and where you're going and how's it going in general. So what I've actually done is, as well as sort of losing some friends and leaving family behind, I'm actually adding friends to my sort of list and circle, really. So yeah, I've been greatly impressed by the number of people that have expressed an interest in what I'm doing. So yeah, I will miss family, of course, but there are opportunities to keep in touch. Well, we've interrupted the questions and answers to take on the herring, so you'll just have to bear with me. And the trick apparently is to avoid having it stolen by the seagulls, so just bear with me. Gosh, that's very good. It's very good. One more. Oh, I can recommend it. I can't recommend eating the tail though. Wow. My first Den Haag herring. Right, here we go. And the next question is, how difficult is it to record Going Dutch? Wow. How difficult is it to record Going Dutch? Well, difficult, I would say. The problem really, if it's a problem, the issue really is that you need to, well, you've got the cameras to organise, you've got the audio, as well as putting together sort of the sequencing. You want people to be interested in the story you're telling, and you want to present it in the best way possible. You may have noticed, or you may have heard me say in a previous video that I use separate audio. So I record audio on a recording device and then match it to the film footage. That gives a better audio reproduction, I think. And that's fine and dandy. The other thing, I suppose, you have to put a little bit of faith in people and strangers, because some of the shots require you to set up a camera and the audio, etc., and then sort of cycle away from it, which is interesting. And then what you want are pictures of you coming back into the frame. So you cycle off and you come back and you hope very much that your kit and equipment is where you left it. So far, so good. But while all of that poses a sort of logistical problem, one of the bigger issues really is the whole time you have to set aside for editing. I'm very lucky that I'm sort of billeted with a friend in Steenwijk, and I have access to Wi-Fi. I have a workstation, and therefore it's much easier for me to sort of put the edits together, and I have time on my side as well. But going forward, it's already clear to me that there will be periods where I'm doing quite a lot of recording, and there'll be limited chance for edit or editing, and that will manifest itself, I think, in arriving in a place with sort of Wi-Fi and a bit of time on my hands, and it will take quite a bit of time, I think, in the fullness of time to put the stories together. But in summary, yes, it can be quite challenging to record Going Dutch. Here we go. And the next question is, where are you now? So where am I now? Well, I mean, as we're doing the recording, I'm in Den Haag, obviously, but where I'm currently based in the Netherlands is the town of Steenwijk, which, if I'm honest, I've become to think of as a bit of a second home. I have very good friends there, and through friends I've made new friends. So yeah, I like Steenwijk, and yeah, I feel very much at home there, and I feel blessed to know the people that I know who live there. But you can't stay in one place all the time if you want to travel the world, so it will soon be time to move on, unfortunately. But no, for the time being, I'm based in Steenwijk. No, what I'll do is move to the next one, and the next question I've got here is, well, logical question really, is where next? From the Netherlands, I will make my way to Canada. The aim is to travel by merchant ship, but that's proving a little bit difficult to finalise, but that's my aim. So I plan to go to Canada, and I logically will be in Canada very, very early May, and the aim is to see friends and family who are strategically placed, ironically, across the country. So while I will be camping quite a lot, I do have friends and family who I will be spending time with, and I'm looking forward to that. If I think out loud for a moment, I think I've probably underestimated a little bit where my sort of time will be allocated. I think it's logical now to think that I will see Christmas in Canada, which I'm not too fussed about at all, really. And then the aim is to, from Canada, drop down into Seattle, where I will spend a wee bit of time. And I've got some plans in Seattle, but that's more of that later. But once I get to Seattle, that will mark the end of phase 1, I think, and will see me sign off to Canada and move into the US of A. Sort of somehow ended up back at the central station, but do a couple more questions if I can. What's so special about Dutch cycling? Gosh, what's special about Dutch cycling? Pretty much everything. Yeah, it's hard to say. Just to sort of start this off, really, I mean, you'll have noticed that in all the videos I've shot so far, I'm wearing a sort of cap and not a cycling helmet, and I genuinely don't think I've seen a single person wearing a cycle helmet other than the guys in Lycra on race bikes as you know them and mountain bikes. And that gives an inkling really of Dutch cycling. But the infrastructure here is geared up for cycling. Every town, city, village has effective cycle lanes. You feel 100% safe cycling here. And as much as people will tell you Amsterdam, Groningen, Den Haag, to name just but a few, about the cities and how their cycling works, the thing for me really is is how you can get from one town or village to another, to another, to another. And in consequence, it's been possible for me to cycle from one end of the country to the other without using a map, just following cycling road signs on the dedicated cycle paths. So I think, rather than try to sum it up, I would say that if you really want to understand Dutch cycling and Dutch cycling culture, you should come to the Netherlands and try it for yourself. It's incredible. Which sort of leads on really to the next question. What sort of bike are you using? Well, I'm cycling around the world on a traditional Dutch bike. It's a Gazelle City Go, to give it its full sort of trade name. And I would say that it's designed to take an average Dutchman to the shops and back, and probably not designed to take a man around the world. However, Dutch bikes are famous for being robust, and they are indeed bulletproof. So what I plan to do is take the idea of going Dutch around the world to its nth degree and use a Dutch traditional bike and use everyday cycling to make my way around the world. I'll do one, possibly two more questions. Are you worried about your safety? I don't think so. You can't cycle around the world, obviously, and be risk-free. But in the accounts that I've read and autobiographies of other travellers, the one thing that comes to mind really is the kindness of strangers and the welcome you get when people meet you. Of course, there are dangers, and one doesn't want to go meeting trouble halfway or put oneself at risk deliberately. But I think the people I meet and the places I visit, I'm pretty confident I will be welcomed rather than sort of spurned, really. Yeah, all of the things I've read and all of the things I've watched suggest that people are welcoming. One has to be careful about roads, and not everywhere has the same cycling cultures or same cycling culture, or indeed interesting cycling as the Netherlands. So there won't be cycle highways everywhere, which sort of reverts back to the issue a few minutes ago when I was talking about not wearing a cycling helmet here. Yeah, I own a couple of three cycle helmets, and I logically think I'm going to have to get one of those and use those once I leave the Netherlands and sort of ride through Canada and beyond. But for my own safety and the sort of risks of cycling around the world and going Dutch around the world, yeah, I think it'll be fine. I think. And I think I've got time for one more question here. What was the inspiration for going Dutch around the world? There isn't one thing I can point to as being the inspiration. As I've just said, I've read a lot of accounts of other travellers, both cycling, motorcyclists, and people who have backpacked around the world, and I've always admired people that have taken their courage and convictions and taken on challenges, but I never really felt I would be part of that sort of, well, I didn't think I'd join their ranks. But the how we got here really stems back from last year, when I planned to cycle around the Netherlands for a year learning about Dutch cycling culture and the attachment of the bicycle the Dutch have. And midway through that, my eldest brother was involved in the freakiest of freakish accidents, which left him without a right leg. And I ended up back in the UK, and I felt that that was probably where I ought to be. But once he gained his independence, it was time, I felt, to look at perhaps returning to the Netherlands and picking up the project where I left off. But a couple of different conversations I had with some people talked about visiting the west coast of America and looking at cycling cultures there. And somehow along the line, very quickly, Going Dutch became Going Dutch Around the World. And yeah, that's a very long answer really to say there isn't really one thing I could point to as the aspiration for the project, or the inspiration rather, but we are where we are, and I'm looking forward to not leaving the Netherlands, but I'm looking forward to the next phase when I head to Canada. Actually, I think, looking through my notes, that was the last question I had to answer. So what I'll do, if you just bear with me a moment. Yeah, so that was the last question. So what I'll do is I'll sign off here. I hope you've enjoyed listening to the answers to the questions that were posed. I hope you'll stay with me as I venture further afield and make my way around the world. I certainly enjoy making the videos, and I enjoy updating you along the way. So, as I say, I hope you'll stick with me, and until the next time, I'll say cheerio.